Welcome to USA Biz Party. Today I have with me Jim Fuse. I keep getting that wrong, I think. But anyway, Jim has actually just become a great colleague in working in USA Biz Party. Of course, right now we're talking about video production and particularly equipment, which ended up causing some really interesting, I say cause like it was a problem, but it led to okay, so it led to some really interesting conversation. So that's one of the things I love about our chat, Jim.
Yeah. Where's John?
Okay.
We wanted John to show up.
Yeah, well, yeah, he should have. And that's the beauty of stuff like what we're doing right now is it's real. It's just the way it is. So if I make mistakes, it's okay, right?
Right.
But anyway, we were just talking about, I love to see how the conversations progress, and what ends up being what you think is really not a very controversial subject, if you will, can bring about some passion that you never anticipated. And it's really all about people's interests, right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
So we were just talking about, so this whole month of August and into the month of September, we're talking about video, because video is so important, especially right now. I mean, the statistics were that by now 90% of marketing would be video. I've not seen that happen quite yet, but video is such a powerful mode to educate, to market, to just talk to people and let them get to know you better. It's another reason we do this after USA Biz Party, is so that people can get to know us better. But yeah, let's talk about how hard it can be to narrow things down and how that affects your equipment choices.
Right. I mean, you could almost say it goes back to, Simon Sinek's book, about your why, because it's like, why are you doing the video? What is the end state of what you want to get out of it? Because if you're doing live streaming is completely different than recorded video. Are you doing classes, or are you out capturing moments in video, like with a gimbal or something, where you're just like catching people doing things to then edit the video? Those are all going to affect your equipment needs. Or I'd say the more mobile you become, the more potentially, right? Even that's a mix of how expensive it could possibly be. And then, like, I have a friend that basically has like a crew, right? I guess it's better call almost like a film crew, where they take different cameras, they write scripts, and they'll record for 2 or 3 days to turn it into a 60-second commercial for a business. So it's just amazing all the different types of equipment that could be possible. But I think to an extent, the fundamentals are basically the same. And, as I said in the chat, I think it starts with your audio. Audio is probably the most important thing, because people will forgive your video, but they won't forgive your audio if they can't hear you properly. But even then, right, as we roll into the understanding that the world has those people that have issues with hearing in general, like how are you working captions into your video or other ways for people to be able to communicate that might not be able to understand you, or even you have language barriers as well, and can you translate into foreign captions? So that's another piece of it as well that I think is really fascinating, and one of the reasons I think there's still so much room, to your point earlier, for growth, because there's I've even heard that sometimes, if you think of creators, like the number of people actually creating on a lot of these platforms is probably under 5%. And if you even think in your own backyard, how many businesses do you know, if you go on their social sites specifically, are using video, if at all?
And I think there's still a lot of hesitance about video, because I guess people are still afraid of video. People are still very afraid of video. And so one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing is to getting out in my community. I'm getting ready to start a channel just about my community And right now, probably the best thing I have is this, my cell phone. And let's talk about the cell phone for a minute, because it's a great starting place. It's probably not where you want to end up depending on the purpose of your video, but let's talk about the equipment that a lot of cell phones now have that's still a great starting place for good video.
Yeah, actually, believe it or not, a lot of times the cell phone camera that you have is actually superior to your webcam. The issue is finding apps, as an example, there's a couple apps that I've found recently that I was able to put on my iPhone and my iPad that allow me to connect it to my computer and actually use that camera front or back, and just gives me a whole another set of capability. The only downfall is it has to be wired to the computer. It can't be wireless. But still, if I wanted to put my cell phone on a tripod and maybe use it at an angle that maybe I'm showing something on my desktop, now I have a new opportunity with the cell phone. I've done also, even I did at a trade show last year when we could actually go outside. I took my iPhone and I put it on a tripod, and by using a lapel mic in a large, noisy convention center, it's I had a double lapel mic, into the phone through an adapter. I was able to interview someone that was like 6 feet away from me on the other side of the camera because we wanted to film them. And the audio, you couldn't tell that there were other people there. So that's where the audio became important, because the microphone was close to the mouth as opposed to, trying to shout in a sense, get the audio into the, microphone on our phone, which is not always the greatest in the world. It's fine when we're talking on the phone, but it's really not set up to be, a microphone for doing, real video production work.
Right. And, it's interesting, too, when you were talking about that, it reminded me of a comment by John Clunan, who's an on and off regular in our chat, marketing professional. Apparently you guys live down the street from each other or something.
Yeah, we just haven't met in person yet, but hopefully one of these days soon.
Well, that would be fun. You guys should like do a quick video when you do and put it on the chat. That would be fun.
Right.
One of the things he brought up is the Bluetooth earbuds that people have and are using. And in his opinion, that was it was unprofessional. I think one of the bigger challenges is most people don't purchase high quality earbuds. We're looking for the least expensive. So those things pick up everything, those microphones, and they can make you sound like you're in a box too.
Right.
They're not, I get that complaint a lot. So now I only use, I don't use those for speaking anymore because it totally ruins the quality. And so maybe we could talk a little bit about that. We need convenient on the one hand sometimes, but we also want to be careful of the audio quality on the other hand.
Right. Yeah. And I think to your point with headphones, like if I'm doing a live interview, I'm always have headphones on, one, because I want to make sure the headphones, quality headphones, like professional ones, will let me hear things that I maybe wouldn't hear with like the earbuds.
Yeah.
I may hear like, oh, there's something going on your end. And I might say, hey, Anna, I'm hearing a buzz or something like that you're just not going to pick up. And then you also have to worry about audio feedback sometimes. And that can happen with some of those headphones as well. And I think that's probably, it might be hard just even when you think of the shape of the ear and everything else to really make that advance in headphone technology to where you can wear some headphones that are not visible. Because the other thing is, right, you don't want to necessarily be doing your audio through your device because you could end up with feedback.
Yeah.
And that is, it's almost like, scratching a chalkboard.
Oh, I know. It's, we had that, our church does live streaming, and we have somebody that's new at the soundboard, and I take turns monitoring the live screen or doing the presentation portion. And so I was on live stream, and there was some awful feedback going through the speakers luckily, because of the way we have the live stream set up, it didn't make it into the live stream because I'm listening going, oh, okay, oh good. It's not people, because I'm conscious, it's bad enough when you're listening to it in person, but it's even worse, and it can cause somebody to totally turn off your video. One of the things we didn't get to that I think is really important is lighting. So I was talking before we started recording, I was talking about this light that I have here. So right now there's a light that's shining directly on my face, which is very unpleasant. Now, if I turn it up, it's better. Well, it's really not better, is it?
Right. It's like washing
It's
you
awful.
out.
But I'm turning this light, and I should take a picture of it. It's just one of those stand-up lamps that you can get from Walmart.
Right.
And so now it's a stand-up lamp, and then it has one of those goosenecks that comes down for the reading. And so what I did is I turned that lamp away from behind my computer toward the wall so that the light we see now is reflected. So lighting's really important, because if you're too dark and people, the audio is super important. So audio is number one, but the lighting, because it affects your video. Let's talk a little bit about that. What are some great options for people that are not terribly expensive? I mean, we're looking.
Well, if you can, you actually, natural lighting can be great. It's just, you got to make sure that you position yourself in such a way that you're not getting the shadows and all that. And I have a little bit of that today, but I did the same thing. I turned on a light behind my computer, just kind of light me up. You don't want the light coming from the back, because that'll also make you look very dark. And it's so it's, it's play with it, right? It's going to change, right? You don't think about it even time of year, because the sun's going to change where its angle is, may affect your lighting coming in through windows. But another good thing to start is great point. Just getting a lamp possibly would be a way to start, and just angle it in the right way, play around with it. But when you want to make that step up, you might get a ring light that you can put on a tripod behind your computer, or even on the floor if you're in a standing area. And there's also these LED lights that you can get on stands, and some that are battery powered, because maybe you want to go do a video in a spot that you just need a little bit more light and you don't have access to power. And a lot of times too, they're adjustable. You can go from brighter to dimmer to kind of match the atmosphere. But lighting is another thing that really can help you look a lot better on your videos. It'll sometimes too help maybe compensate for your camera. Like if you're going with the camera that's built into your computer, if you're doing a computer, it may not do as well unless there's more light present. And then of course, even with backdrops, if people are going to use green screens, they're really going to need to make sure they have enough light for that green screen to work. And that's why, at least, I'm not saying I'm against green screens, but you've got to be really make sure you've made that good setup with your lighting, or the green screen's actually going to probably cause more harm than good. And so you think the green screen, where you could just get yourself a backdrop, from like a graphic company, put it on some sort of vinyl. You could have your logo back there, and maybe almost like put it on a roller thing, and you can just roll it in and out. So like you could have your brand behind you, and then when the show's over, you go and put it somewhere else. But like John was saying about studios, right? Do you have the room? Can you figure out a way to do something in a confined, smaller area as well? So that's something to consider.
Right. And some of the things that came up too were green screen was one of them. Lighting it wasn't brought up nearly as much, but I think it is really important when we were doing some professional photos outside. And I mentioned this in a previous chat. The guy that was taking the pictures, he looked at me and he goes, "Oh, do you have one of those reflective car, what do they call it? The car shades, that keep." And so I grabbed one, and he used that to adjust the lighting to get the best lighting on us. So I actually, when I'm at home, I actually have just a plain piece of board, and I have aluminum foil taped around it so that you know, if the light's not, because where I'm usually working, the light is not very good. So I have to play with it to make sure that I get the lighting so that the light comes to my face, or whatever it is I'm working on, usually my face. Um, but there was one thing that was, I think, was brought up, and it was very important. And Tom made a comment saying that a lot of people will blame the equipment, but it's really because there's a lack of training or skill. So how do we overcome that? Because sometimes we just don't have the wherewithal, or we need to get our message out. You know, can't go out and buy DLSR cameras or whatever we would need, or we can't afford a production company.
Right.
So what can we do about that to get more proficient at
Well, I
that?
think I think even going back to your phone, record yourself on a tripod, review your videos, see what you're doing right, see what you're doing wrong, and make those adjustments, and then take it to whatever your, if you want to call it, your next level up. The next level is presenting on the computer, right? How do I look when I'm in front of the camera? Thinking about those things like camera awareness, right? I'm looking at the camera, but it probably looks to everyone like I'm looking at you, because if I look at you, then I'll look like I'm looking down. And so those are those little things that we have to practice. You know, even from a speaking perspective, if you're not a professional speaker, and that was funny, I was actually on Deb Eckerling's Gold Chat interview yesterday on Facebook. We were talking about speaking, and part of it is like Toastmasters is a great place to work on your speaking confidence, because you know you're not always going to get that audience reaction that you would have in person, because you're speaking to a camera and you don't necessarily have an audience, but you have to act like you've got an audience there. And so you want to also make sure understanding your microphone and how to speak into the microphone. You know, they've got the, you know, those pop filters, because if you know, speak in it wrong, right, you get that poof sound into the microphone.
Yeah.
So you have to maybe be at an angle. And so I really think it's just, you know, don't be afraid to practice. It's like, it's kind of like riding a bike, right? We don't know how to ride it at first. And, and know that it's not always going to go perfect, and don't try to be perfect. And, you know, you can always get someone else to watch your video, because I think sometimes we're too critical on ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll never get moving if we don't. I mean, just like what you've done here, you know, by you, you know, getting out here and starting to do these videos, I'm sure you're getting more comfortable. I mean, I know you've done other sort of speaking and presenting before, but this is kind of a little different than what you're probably used to, where you're, you know, usually in a much different setting. And especially now, this has become a bigger thing. And I think in a positive sense, right, everyone, I won't say everyone, a lot of people, right, are having to use Zoom as a daily part of their work life. So now they're having to get over that fear of the camera in order to communicate. So I think there's a real opportunity here. And so you can start small, right? Start as simple as your phone camera, just maybe get that external microphone and kind of work your way up. And you don't always need headphones. If you're just recording, you don't need headphones at all,
Mm-hmm.
because you're just presenting. And so then you just want to make sure that your audio going into your device is good. You know, when I record like pre-recorded training sessions, I don't wear my headphones, because I know I'm just recording. I'm not talking to an audience, but I still may have the microphone nearby me, or I might even switch it up and use, like John says, a lapel mic that's wired, so I don't have the microphone quite as obvious. So that's another consideration.
Yeah, and we had quite a bit of conversation, which again, you never know where these conversations are going to go, but we had quite a bit of conversation about a wired mic versus a wireless mic. The thing that I get concerned about with Wi-Fi, so right now, even for this meeting right here, I used to do everything on Wi-Fi. And one of the problems I had regularly was that suddenly my Wi-Fi would die, or something would go wrong, and then I'm out of the meeting, and then you have to restart a recording or whatever. So if you can, if it's at all possible, especially when you're doing something like Zoom, which is which is on a platform, instead of just recording on your phone or just recording on your computer, which are also good, then you really need to think about hardwiring your computer into the into your router or through an Ethernet cord, because it really cuts down. Since I've been doing that, I have not had a single glitch in terms of transmission. And I think a lot of people would do well, especially if Zoom is such an important part of their business. They really need to think about that hardwire, because then you're not, well, thunderstorms, anything can disrupt wireless, you know?
Hmm. No, I think that's 100% true. I mean, I've been fortunate. I think, like I told you, on my main system where I do most of my work, I'm hardwired to it as well. And yeah, the only time I've had an issue is like we did have a thunderstorm that knocked the power out. Well, then it doesn't matter. Um, but no, you're absolutely correct. That if you can hardwire, if you're having to use the internet, you know, that's extremely beneficial, because you just don't know. And even sometimes we don't think about it. If you live in a, like, say, a residential community, depending on the type of internet you have, and I've seen this before, if everyone in the neighborhood is getting on their cable internet at the same
Yeah.
time, you will start to see issues with your internet speed. And so that's where, if you can, you know, get yourself hardwired, at least that can overcome some of it. It can definitely have an impact on the Wi-Fi. It seems like more so than anything else for people that are hardwired.
Yeah, yeah, that's a real big consideration, because you know the bandwidth, even if you've got, so if you've got even a business where you've got a lot of people that are on Zoom meetings, it's important to make sure that their meetings aren't interrupted, because there's nothing more frustrating than somebody's mid-sentence and they freeze on the screen. And I mean, that can happen whether you're using Zoom and you're recording like what we're doing right now, or you're live streaming and you are on YouTube or one of the other live stream platforms. And that happens because, again, you're dependent on Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi is dependent on bandwidth. And yeah, oh, you would laugh, but it was unfortunate. Have you ever heard of Jeb Blunt? He's actually from the Atlanta area.
I have not.
He's a very famous sales trainer. It took me a year to get him on my show. I was so excited. And yeah, I mean, it took me a year to get him on the show. It was even like 3 months before, by the time I finally got through to his team to where we could actually schedule him. And my daughter was working for me at the time, and she wasn't feeling well, but she had to work for me. So she came down here to my office, and we had so many problems. Did not have my computer hardwired. So many problems. And the audio was garbled. A lot of it was garbled. I had to go in and do a lot of audio editing, trying to make things sound okay, because there was just so much garble. And then, of course, the video just was horrible.
Mm.
Well, I walk out, and what's my daughter doing? She's on YouTube watching all these videos. And I thought, oh, I can't believe that, you know, we just didn't think about it. And because he was so hard to get on, I just had to work with what I had. But yeah, if you're having trouble, that's something to really give consideration, especially if it's for a professional, for your work. You want
Right.
to make sure that you're hardwired. So this is this is a VoIP phone. I just pull the Ethernet out of my phone. Plus, nobody can call me, and that's what I use when I'm on Zoom calls. So it would be really, and I'm sure there are ways you can be very inventive to make these things happen.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, any final words to our listeners and our viewers as far as what would be something really valuable to invest in as they start to build their video production equipment?
I would say start with a microphone. Start, whether it's, you know, if you're going to be doing stuff on your phone, get a lapel mic that'll plug into your phone's jack there. You know, you might have to get an adapter depending on the type of phone you have, because the audio can kind of forgive the video stuff, and then maybe just do it step by step. Don't feel like you have to do it all at once.
Mhm.
Kind of work your way up. Even like John said on today's chat, as much as I think that the cameras are, not talking like cameras like the mirrorless and all that are awesome and great. That's a big step up. And do I really need to make that investment? Or I could just go with, if you can find them, the Logitech C920, which I'm on right now, normally is about a $50 webcam. It makes a huge difference from what you have initially starting, and then you might get into the $100 to $200 range, but that's going to be a significant improvement. So don't feel like you have to do it all at once. Take it in stages, right? So probably, the lights might be next if lighting is an issue, but just like you brought up, great points about, you can maybe work with what you have. It might just be a matter of moving a lamp or getting a lamp that's got some adjustable LED bulbs or something like that to allow you to adjust as well.
Slow and steady wins the race. Yeah, don't shoot for perfection. I think that's a big key too. Nothing's going to be perfect. Nothing is going to be perfect. And so get out there and do something. And your first few videos may not be what you like, but it's a starting place. It's a good place to start. And that's where both Jim and I would encourage you, just get started. Get started. Don't be afraid. Well, thank you, Jim, for joining me today on USA Biz Party. Please do, if you're watching, subscribe, share this with your friends. Let them know what we're doing here. We are all about business. We are about helping you grow your business. Great things are coming. We're getting ready to start a membership website, which will be awesome to help people moving beyond just chatting into really doing business together. So we invite you to be part of that. Thanks again, Jim.
Thank you. Great to see you.